Good evening. I should say Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Boy, that was kind of weak. All right. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Much better. All right. And I know that this has nothing to do with Australia, but because we're close, I figure we got to at least try. Today, I want to talk about happiness. It's an important topic to me and a little more difficult in the Star Theater. So the whole idea of a forum is you guys get involved. So I will again try to take your comments and say them again out loud so other people can hear. But talk loudly and often. Heckling, Dawn, is fine. Heckling is fine. And so to kind of start with that, what is happiness? I mean, we've got Disney up here. This is supposed to be the happiest place on earth. What is? State of mind. Oh, we had that back there. So state of mind. And what does that mean when you say state of mind? Related to attitude. So would you argue that, and I'm a PhD, we argue about everything. So would you make an argument then that it really is a choice? Okay, so people say yes, a choice. How many would say they're happy? How many are lying? No, I mean, all right, so almost everybody says they're happy. I do think you're lying. Can there be gradients of happiness? A little bit? All right. So if we say, what is your definition, which is a little different than what is it, because you could say it's a state of mind. I'm not giving that one up. I think that plays a component, but I think there's more to it than that. How would you define it? So there's not a universal definition of happiness. It depends on each person. An inner feeling of satisfaction and contentment. And yes, I know, I mean, he's flashing me because I'm off screen. For those watching in your cabin, I'm going to be off screen. I mean, but you should come down. No. Wayne is going to be okay. It'll be all right. So an inner feeling of contentment. What else? What else might be a definition? Influenced by the people around you and experiences. I love that too. State of being in a collective. So it's not just an inner state of being, it's in community. Okay, any other thoughts? Peacefulness. All right, yeah, are there other adjectives you would pull in? Joy, excitement. Yeah, I mean, because is happiness just, all right, it's not so horrible. I can make this work. I'm content. It's all right. Or is there an excitement or something else to it? Any thoughts on that? Is there more? Is excitement euphoria? A flow of positive hormones and chemicals. All right. I think all of those play into it. So what I want to try and look at it is pick it apart from some different theories. So first look at philosophy. And for that, I'm going to go way back to the Greeks and say, what did the Greeks say happiness is? And then move forward and look at Buddhism and say, what do Buddhists say happiness is? And I know that each of us comes to this auditorium from a different faith tradition. And so while something like Buddhism or Christianity may make you feel uncomfortable, what I would love to do is to hold that in tension a little bit and say, what do these guys think? I'm from the Midwest, so what do these people think? And is there anything I can take from that for me? I may not be Buddhist, I may not be Christian, but is there anything in there that rings truth to me? Yes. In the present moment. All right, so being in the now, not thinking about the future or the past. How many would say they live in the now? A few of you guys. All right, more than I thought. I'm into next week. I mean, I gave this lecture hours ago in my head, and you know, I'm working on Australia too, and unfortunately, I agree with you. Unfortunately, that is a real struggle for me. I don't do that as well. But so we're going to look at philosophy, we're going to look at religion, we'll look then at kind of science, psychology, sociology, and what does it have to say about this whole happiness deal. And then finally, I want to talk about some theories. And a few folks have come up to me. Someone said, you know, happiness really is looking at it, the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm like, all right, that fits. Someone else came up from a faith tradition, actually, and was talking to me and said, you got to watch this TED Talk. It was a great TED Talk on retirement, and that we're, most of us, into retirement, and that there are 4 phases of retirement, and that's really powerful. And we'll talk a little bit about it today maybe, but we'll definitely talk about it in a later lecture. But then, so really, you know, how do we put this idea of being happy into motion in our own lives? So that's kind of my trajectory. I start with this guy, Aristotle. I love Aristotle. I mean, he is just a really cool philosopher, and he talks about eudaimonia, which is really kind of defined as flourishing. It has aspects of joy, but to be joyful in his mind is to flourish. How do we like that term? Are we good? All right. So that's more than just contentment. It's flourishing. And so he says some of the key concepts are it's cultivating virtues. That if we live a virtuous life, we're going to be happy. Now, I had lunch with Charlie. Charlie defined, where's Charlie? I saw him walk in. Over there. So we were defining terms to define what is value. First, we have moral values. We have moral values are things like courage and temperance. So if you have moral values, then you're going to be happy. And how do you do those? Those are developed by practice. So you make up your mind that you're going to be courageous, you're going to have temperance in life, and by practicing that virtue, you ultimately gain happiness. He then says intellectual values. And I loved it when I read that, because continual learning, I would say I'm a lifelong learner. You guys? Most of us, I got a couple of no's, but no, for the most part, that this wisdom, understanding, continual learning, that ultimately leads to happiness. So how many think Aristotle gets it right? A couple. All right, so how many think he has things to improve on? What is he missing? What's he missing? Relationships. I like that. What else? What? Spontaneity. Whimsy is not in there. There's no whimsy in Aristotle. Okay, so he then adds community role. Yep. He does. He says that you can't have a truly virtual, you can't have a true fulfillment, you can't truly flourish unless you live a moral life and are a lifelong learner. That so are there people? Say again. All right, so he's saying this is important because you're saying that there are people who don't live a virtuous life but could still be happy because of income. What else? Having a good time. He would, yeah, I mean, I think if Aristotle were here, he would argue that while you may have pleasure by doing these other things, you aren't truly flourishing in happiness. So he would argue there's that distinction, but he does bring up this community role. Happiness is interconnected with meaningful relations and civic engagement. Yeah, Charlie. Non-slaves. This is only for men and non-slaves. Yeah, the rest of them not so much. Um, it is very judgmental, and Greece was a fairly judgmental society, such that if you inspire the youth to think like this, they'll make you kill yourself. And so they, gave him a death sentence. Well, not him, but yeah. So I mean, it's a difficult. Morals in Greece were subjective but strong. I mean, there was a lot of judgment. So then we get to this painting, which will make us feel that joyous thing, but it also makes us feel a little uncomfortable. So here we have Epicurus, and he says happiness is attained through the pursuit of pleasure, understood as tranquility and freedom from pain and anxiety. So how do we feel about that? He's dropped that whole moral stuff. But if we're happy, it's what? Self-centered. Yeah, I mean, I think we've moved the ego to us here in this place. And so he talks about key concepts, distinctions, and this is where Epicurus is a hedonist. Clearly, he comes out of that camp. That was why the eat, drink, be merry, naked people. But it's this idea for him where he says, yes, we are hedonists. And most Americans get really angsty when I say that we're hedonists. And they say, oh, I am, no, not me. And then I go, let me just ask you. So would you say if you, not you, but you look at the other people in the United States, everybody goes, yeah, they are hedonists like crazy. Me, no. But there is this idea of self-centeredness that we pick up in the United States, and I think in the West in general. But what he says is that hedonism is awesome, but if you go to the World Cafe and you go to that pizza bar every single day and then you go have dessert, are you happy? I heard a little grumbling. Somebody was like, yeah, I'm kind of happy. And the answer is today you are happy. What about tomorrow? You do it again. Are you happy? Maybe. Third day, Don pulls out his scale and you go, this is not sustainable. And so Epicurus says it has to be a hedonistic model, but it has to be overlaid with sustainability. So if you can't keep doing it, then that's not right. It has to be hedonism that you can keep doing. Sex with 1,000 people, probably fun once, I don't know. But not forever. Pie, not forever. What are things that you can do forever in as much as you want? Exercise. Yeah, that's one. And do we get pleasure out of exercising? Yeah, we get endorphins, back to that whole idea of chemical base. What about friendship? Relationships, loving relationships. Yeah, and his big argument is that you can have relationships and pour yourself 100% into someone, and then tomorrow pour yourself 100% into someone else, and that never runs out and always gives you back more than you gave. That is a hedonistic point of view, but it still has sustainability. And that's why I like him, in that he's not just eat pie till we die. I mean, it's this idea of sustainable hedonism. And then he says the same thing, that knowledge, gaining knowledge, is important, not just because it fills us and gives us new worldviews, like Viking traveling around and seeing the world in a different way, but knowledge dispels fear. That the more we know, the less afraid we are, and then the more happy we are. So while you first looked at this painting behind and felt a little awkward where I was going to go, I could argue that there's a lot of cool stuff in this one. So that's looking at that. Let's transition over to Buddhism, and this is not all Buddhism, but this is a good representation of a Buddhist view of happiness.
If you really think about our life, we are in a never-ending journey of pursuing happiness. Let me tell that again. We are in a never-ending journey of pursuing happiness. That means we are pursuing happiness, we are chasing and we are seeking for happiness, but yet we have not found it. Says, if with a pure mind one speaks or acts, the happiness will follow him like a shadow following a man. So that means the happiness and the sadness entirely depends on the purity and the impurity of our mind. When our mind is pure, we can find the happiness. So, how can we gain this purity in our mind in order to find the happiness? Well, Buddha teaches us there are a lot of things that you can do to make your mind pure. So today, I'm going to share with you a few things that can give you the happiness in your life, that you can find the happiness in your life. First thing, accepting the reality of life will give you the happiness. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you realize this reality, you can face these situations successfully. Right? It is not always this bad experience makes us frustrated. It is our reaction towards this bad experience makes us frustrated. Whenever you get a bad experience or a bad day or a bad situation, tough situation, difficult situation, you have two choices. Either you can focus on the pain and feel miserable about that situation, or you can focus on the lesson that bad situation teaches us and learn from it and start growing your life. So, if you accept the reality of life, it is not temporary. Sometimes the people around us are not in our control. We cannot control their reactions. We cannot control their opinions. So when you realize these situations, you can face those situations successfully. That is one thing, accepting reality of the life.
All right, so that goes back to the whole idea that happiness is inside of us and it's a choice. When you guys said that, didn't realize it was actually a Buddhist principle. How do we feel about that? How true does that feel? True. How do we miss the mark of being happy with this in mind. You have a horrible day. You went to the horrible day. I mean, by Viking standards, today was a horrible day. I got up and breakfast wasn't at my door. So I actually put on clothing and I went to the World Cafe and I wanted one thing. I wanted to have a Eggs Benedict. And for those who went up, they had mushy peas with an egg on top. That is not an Eggs Benedict. So how do I deal with that if I want to be happy? I mean, I am making light a little, but it's this idea of how do we deal with the bad things? How should we deal with it? All right, so if you don't have bad things, how do you know what good things are? And the mushy peas might have been wonderful. Uh, there were all right. So, yeah. So I mean, I suppose you have to have bad and good in order to make it all kind of come together. And what he is saying, I think, is that when bad things happen, turn it and say, "What did I learn? I want to order room service tomorrow." But what can we, and we do grow because we say, hey, we don't want to do that again. Maybe it's like burning yourself. You go, that's not what I want. I want to do something different. So his number two.
Number two, Buddha said, be generous. Practicing generosity is a major practice in Buddhism. Well, in Buddhism, the generosity is known as dana. In dana, Buddha says that you have to give without any expectations. So what we have to do, Buddha says, be generous, give, help others, dedicate a part of your life on behalf of others. Something we can do.
Okay, so number two, generosity. How do we feel about that one? Does that give us happiness? All right. Examples of generosity. Tipping the bar staff. Service. What else? Setting up a scholarship. Yeah. Anything else? Volunteering. Yeah, all of those are ways that we give of ourself. And we might say give of our treasure. And what's our largest treasure? Our time. And so being able to be involved in that type of service. All right, so number three.
And number three, forgiving. Forgiving is one of the most important things that we can do to create happiness in our life. We have to forgive ourselves. Also, we have to forgive others too. Because forgiving, when you forgive, it doesn't mean that you are saying okay to others' mistakes. It's okay. No, you're not saying like that. When you forgive, you make your heart free. So when you forgive, it's not for that person, it is for you. And also, there is one happiness that is called the ultimate happiness in this world that the Buddha teaches us. That is called Nibbana or Nirvana. That is the enlightenment. When you realize about the reality of this life, and when you remove this desire or the craving that arises within your mind, then Buddha says that is the ultimate happiness. Simply, the Nibbana means Ragakkayo, Dosakkayo, Mohakkayo, Nibbana. That means removing of the desire, anger, and the delusion of the mind is called the enlightenment. So that is the highest level of happiness that we all can reach. So when you practice these practices, all right, when you engage yourself in wholesome state, that will create you the happiness in the life. So
if we look at that, how do we feel about forgiveness? Hard, crucial. Is it something that provides happiness or leads us towards happiness? Yeah. How many say yes? How many say not so much? Okay, all right. So most say yes. It is, I think, one of the hardest things in the world because I do tend to give it and take it back, and it's hard to truly forgive. And what he's talking about is these four noble truths, and in it. And I've got a whole lecture on Buddhism that we'll do as we kind of move into Asia. But it's this idea that all of life is suffering. And that's one of those things that takes a minute to understand what they're trying to say. But there is pain everywhere. And that we have to make this conscious decision to address that pain. And they would argue that what causes our pain, it's all of these desires we have. It's that we want more money, we want more power, we want better positions, we want, more, and it's that drive for more that is actually causing our suffering and our pain. And if we can then step back and say, no, I don't need more. I am content today. I don't need to think about tomorrow. Today is where I sit. Then you can find happiness. Yes. The delusion of the mind is the second one, this samudaya, which is that the truth of the origin of suffering, according to Buddha, craving and desire are the leading causes of suffering. Our constant want and attachments result in unhappiness. So we have to recognize that all of our stuff is what's actually making us unhappy. So that's what he's trying to argue with that, and when we'll go into it more. I'm already behind, so we're gonna move on. But he does go on and talk about, or we could go on and talk about the Eightfold Path, which we won't. All right, so moving on to Christianity, and here again, this is not a Baptist and a Presbyterian and an Episcopal and a Catholic view. This is one Christian view. So I'm not trying to broad brush Christianity with this, but I think it's a fairly common argument for Christian version of happiness.
But if we understood what joy was, then we actually can live knowing that we're made for joy. We actually can read the scripture that tells us a bunch of times, rejoice in all circumstances, rejoice in any state in life, any place you are in life, you actually can have joy. Happiness is circumstantial, it's up to chance, but joy is something entirely different. Here's my definition of joy. I came across it a couple years ago and I really like it because it actually I think is true. Joy is the abiding and pervasive sense of well-being. Say that like 12 more times, right? Joy is the abiding and pervasive sense of well-being. Well, what if you're in the middle of a crisis? What if you're in the middle of sorrow? What if you're in the middle of uncertainty and sadness and all these things? Can you still have joy? Can you still have this abiding and pervasive sense of well-being? Yes, you can. Why? Jesus. He's the right answer, as always. Jesus. Why? G.K. Chesterton, way back in the day, right, convert to Catholicism from atheism. One of his famous sayings about joy is this: joy is the gigantic secret of the Christian. Joy is the gigantic secret of the Christian.
So here, and he's trying to talk about joy versus happiness. So are they the same thing? No. How are they different? Circumstance, explain. Who said that? Okay. Okay. Got it. So happiness is circumstantial. Joy has a more fulfilling spiritual sense. Is that kind of right? Is that what you're arguing? Sorry? It emanates. Okay, so does joy create happiness? If you're joyful, are you happy? Happiness creates joy. Anybody go the other way? I think it's something you could argue both easily. And when we start to talk about faith and Christianity, some folks get angsty. So I don't want to dig too deep into that. But here are two different views for how happiness can come from a faith or a religious practice. And I'm going to
So if you go from a worldview where that's just chance or worldview where it's the fickle gods, who you'd rather almost they not pay attention to you than they actually pay attention to you, to understanding, wait a second, there is one God, he is real, he is good, he cares about me, he knows my name.
So here he's talking about the idea that in a Christian sense, capital G, God knows everyone, and with that love through Jesus, that you can rest in any circumstance and know that there is someone outside of you caring and guiding and taking care of you, and there is joy in that. So from a Christian perspective, I'm being a bit simplistic, but it gives you an idea of two different views on joy and happiness. So if we then go to psychology, we have this well-being theory, which says that to be happy or having well-being, you have to have engagement. And part of that is the flow. And I experience that. Many of you probably have too. If I'm crafting a really cool spreadsheet, I can sit down and start messing with that bad boy, and 4 hours goes by and it feels like 10 minutes. That means you are in the flow. So whatever you're doing, whether it's making stockings for Christmas, what are they called? Stockings. Christmas stockings. Somebody was talking about making Christmas stockings, and you're in the flow, that all of a sudden time just evaporates. Relationships, meaning, positive emotions, and achievement all lead to a feeling of well-being, which they are arguing is happiness. How do we feel about this theory? Kind of mixed. We like it. Don likes it. I mean, if Don likes it, everybody should like it. I mean, come on. So, but it's this idea that there are what I want to try to get to from this, some social science theories pull different components that when they come together in synergy, they create happiness in our life. And one is achievement. Two is that we have a purpose, that when we get up in the morning, we have a reason to get out of bed. That in doing it, we interact with new relationships. We have these positive emotions from relationships, conversations, and activities with others. And then ultimately, we have engagement where we are producing something. And I think there's, at least anecdotally, something rings true in that. So if we look then at countries, everyone says, where is the happiest place on earth? It is not Orlando, Florida. At least if you look at the number of times that these countries have been listed in the top 10, Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, they are the happiest place on earth. Why do you think? Why? Hockey. No, what? Say it again. Hoggy. What's hoggy? Okay, a cozy feeling on Friday night that you have with friends at the pub or in front of an open fire. Okay. Not my friends, but all right. So in front of an open fire, hoggy. I like that. All right. Why else do you think? Snow. Yeah, what else do these places have in common? Aquavit. Yes. Surprisingly, social scientists say that what they have in common is strong social support network. That compared to other places, they're better. Higher levels of trust. That people trust each other and they trust the government. Who knew? Work-life balance, actually taking time off and going and climbing a mountain. Equality and low levels of income inequality. That's an interesting one, I thought. Connection to nature, education and personal development, that the societies, the countries support education, strong community and social connections, and cultural attitudes towards happiness. Interesting. So if you look at country-wise, those are the types of things that seem to spawn widespread community happiness. Now, is that the United States? Do we have that? No. So what would you say the United States has? Chaos. No, what else? Compared to those things, what do we value? Greed, money, freedom, working long hours, that Protestant work ethic. So if we look at kind of individualistic cultures, which we would argue Canada, the United States, and others are, they emphasize personal autonomy and self-expression. That we get happiness out of doing what we think we should do and don't tell me what to do. Happiness is often linked to personal achievements and income. That the better we are financially, the more we win, and somehow our happiness is tied to that. So United States, Canada, Western Europe. How about Japan, China, or group cultures? For them, it's prioritizing group harmony and community well-being. That if we don't have conflict, they're happier. Happiness is often derived from relationships, family, social cohesion. So depending upon where you live can also impact not only your baseline level of happiness, but what you consider to be happiness. That can change. They also talk about these happiness grids, and there clearly is a chemical component. I mean, for those who work out, there is an endorphin high that, once you get 8 or 9 laps around, you start to feel better when you're going out in the morning. So endorphins and dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin, all of those come in. So research findings on happiness and well-being, we have the importance of relationships. We've talked a bit about that. The impact of income, positive and negative, the role of purpose and meanings, and I think in retirement, that is one of the biggest things we lost. That and I'll give a really quick summary of the TED Talk that I saw. He talks about 4 phases. The first phase of retirement is vacation. All of a sudden, nobody's telling me when to get up. I am on vacation. And then the second phase is you go, vacation's not so great. I don't have any purpose. I've lost 80% of my friends because they were work friends. I'm not accomplishing anything. Maybe I have no value. And then the third, he called the 3 Ds, and I've forgotten the third, but the first one was depression. The second one was divorce. And the third one was something else. But the whole idea is that now that I kind of have lost my identity, I'm Brian, I'm a college professor. I'm Brian, I'm a business owner. Now I'm Brian, I'm retired. Nobody cares. It's hard. You have to work through that. And so the third is kind of the depression after losing all of this. And then the fourth, he calls the happiest place on earth. That the fourth one is all of a sudden you start to do service. You start to do something that gives back. And you realize that you have a whole new set of friends. And you have a whole new purpose. And you may or may not be gaining money out of it, but you've got the money you need. Now it's the relationships and the giving back and the service that you need. And so this whole idea, role of purpose and meaning, especially for us in retirement, that's an important, what is my thing? And then gratitude and mindfulness. And then physically, we have biological and neurological factors. We have brain regions. Genetically, some people are just happier than others. And we have to recognize that my happiness set point might be different than your happiness set point. And we have to then work within that. And that doesn't make you better or me better. It's just we're different, but we can still have purpose and meaning and gratitude and all of these other factors in our life. So happiness versus pleasure, I would love to be able to talk about it, but I'll just give a quick overview that pleasure is external, unsustainable, feels good momentarily, but happiness is more internal, more sustainable, and more lasting. So we're not just looking for pleasure, we're looking then for happiness. So here is the role between love and happiness.
My name is Gretchen Rubin, and this is the Happiness Project. The resolution for this week is love. A question I often hear is, okay, so many things contribute to happiness, but what's the one most important thing for happiness? What's the key to happiness? If you had to pick one thing, what's the key? And there's a lot of different answers to that question because you can come at happiness from a lot of different angles. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say one of the answers to that question is the key to happiness is love. And love in many different iterations. One clearly is the love for the people in your own life, for your immediate circle. And I certainly have found for myself, the more that I can inculcate in myself loving feelings, feelings of affection, forbearance, gratitude, the more lovingly I can act and the more loving I feel. And the great thing about love is that it tends to drive out negative emotions like anger, resentment, annoyance. And when I can find ways to think about why I have loving feelings towards the people in my life, then I tend to just feel a much more warm and deep connection to them. But then there's also the love that you feel for people that aren't in your direct circle, that you don't actually know. And one of the things about being happier is that it allows you to turn outward more easily and to think about the pain of other people and the pain of the world and try to do what you can out of love and out of empathy and a desire to show consideration for other people, to do what you can for them. But I think that most people have a pretty good sense of the fact that love is very important to happiness and that putting love at the center of your life is a very good idea.
So she goes on to talk about things you love. So what are some of the things you love? Gambling? No. Family. I like that better. What else? No, I what? Ice cream? Ice cream. That works. What else? No, but really, what do you love? Say back. Everyday living, friends, family, shopping. I know, that's a real one. I think that's real. Wife. Oh, Don says wife. I like that. You're done, man. You are golden. Your dog, yeah. And somebody didn't say, but what about reading? Do you love reading? Do you love biking? Do you love hiking? All of those things. And to go on and say, yes, loving relationships are part of it. But another part of it is what things to take a minute over coffee and just go, what do I love? And then go, am I doing the things I love? And if you're not, maybe consider changing your time. Because if reading is something you love, but you always put it at the end of the list, you're depriving yourself of love. And I think that was an interesting, as she goes on, it's an interesting idea of our time is our biggest marker of who we are. We can say who we are, but it's what we do that is our true marker. And so are we doing the things we love?
But I think
I'm going to skip over. So here, this is something you all know. We initially, if you look at me, and I won't say you, but there was a large chunk of my career that I would say, what's the most important thing in my life? God. Second most important thing in my life, family. Third most thing in my life, making money, career. You would look at my life and it was career, 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 maybe a little bit of faith, maybe a little bit of family, but it was all about career. And yet it's this idea, this flawed assumption that materialism, time or money, power, fame, accomplishment, that those are actually going to give us happiness. And that's a Western society that at least some argue, and I tend to agree, is a misnomer. We're focused in the wrong direction when we focus on those things. Not that they aren't important in a holistic manner, but the way at least I pursued them, not so much. Pursuit of meaning. Let's talk about some current theories.
What about this new hypothesized happiness formula? Well, it was proposed in the 1990s by several psychologists, including positive psychology's frontman Martin Seligman. This is what it looks like. H equals S plus
formulas.
C plus V. I know it looks a little messy, but I'll clear things up with you shortly. But I want to sidestep with a question. You have this guy named Bob, and there's a specific moment in his life that can go two separate ways. In one future timeline, he loses both of his legs. However, in the opposite, he wins the lottery. Of course, one future is more preferred than the other. However, what do you think Bob's subjective experience a year later would be? Would he feel happier or sadder in each scenario? After about 1 year, Bob's happiness will actually return to the point it was just before each event happened. I know it's kind of hard to imagine. How could one go back to those levels after winning the lottery? How could one become consistently happy again after losing their legs? The best answer I can give you is that humans are really resilient. We're also pretty good at adapting. The lottery winner either loses all their money, or their lifestyle becomes the new normal. After losing one's legs, you feel terrible, yes, but after a while you set more modest goals. You think that today was better than yesterday, and so on and so forth. This process is known as the adaptation principle. People make judgments about their present state that are based on whether it's better or worse than the state they've known their whole life. So I may be thinking today was awesome, I won the lottery, but 6 months down the road I may be like, I remember when I won the lottery, that was amazing. People usually go back down to their baseline happiness. Yes, some of our happiness is determined by genetics.
So he then goes on and says that the biological set point, that each of us has a biological happiness level. Good things happen, bad things happen. We tend to remove or come back to our set point. Then he has these conditions.
The C stands for the conditions that are in your life. Normally we think about the big events, like winning the lottery, affecting our happiness. But it's more the small things of our everyday. They can slowly degrade or uplift our mood. A few of the conditions shown to affect our mood over time include the following. Noise. People who must adapt to chronic sources of noise, such as highways getting built, they never do. This takes a toll on us. Commuting. If you have a long commute with a lot of traffic, it induces stress over time. Shame is another condition. It turns out that people who go through plastic surgery tend to report higher quality of life and even decreases in psychiatric symptoms like depression and anxiety. The thinking is that people who undergo these procedures tend to feel a lot of shame about their bodies that causes a constant detriment to their happiness. So when they fix what creates that shame, they get happier. Number 4 is lack of control, and this is a big one. There have been several studies that show that a lack of control affects performance. However, in a case of a nursing home study, having more control can actually lead to more happiness, better health, and possibly a longer life. Relationships are a very powerful condition. Imagine having a bad fight with someone, and the days following, you ruminate about everything they said and what you could have said. Having a negative relationship for an extended period of time will adversely affect you, but having a truly flourishing relationship will affect you positively. I'm adding an additional condition to the list: work. It's something that we take part of in a majority.
So he argues then that all of these together work on our ability to take our set point and move it to a higher level. work, which is the idea of having a purpose, relationships, inverse relationship with control, that having some structure in our life is important. Surprisingly, shame, I was surprised that he was saying that plastic surgery actually creates happiness, and in the idea that if you're unhappy with your appearance, if you take some positive action on that, it is better. And then commuting and noise. So all of these are ways we can change. And with that, I know we've got other things, so I'm going to pause it here. I will be doing the meaning of life. So we will kind of pick up on the meaning of happiness, finish that, and move into the meaning of life when we do that for them. So guys, enjoy and talk about among yourselves what you think the meaning of happiness is. Have a great night.